Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dear friends, it's of course a great pleasure for me to share today my views on our beloved industry. And for that, I would say nothing better than a good old school physical mega convention like this one. So thanks, Luc, for organizing it. So as we were saying before, many things are changing in the automotive, but there is one thing that should never change, I think. Our industry was born to create physical connection between people. It is about physical relationship with the product. Touch, smell, view, all the senses are involved. So nothing will completely replace a motor show, even in the era of the metaverse. That's why for us at Renault, there was no question about being present or not at the Mondial de l'Automobile. So when you called me 1 year ago, more or less, Luc, I remember, I think you remember, it took me like no more than 3 seconds to confirm that we would be all in the Mondial de l'Automobile, right? So we are here because we love it, without hesitation. It is as simple as that. The automotive industry has always been a technical and complex sport, from the science of engineering to the organizational discipline of manufacturing. But there is something that makes it different from any other heavy industry. Automotive has always touched people in the heart. Thanks God, people don't bite only at the kilo or at the meter. I see personally evidence of that every day. Still now, when I read the comments on social networks, when I see people on the sidewalk turning around to look at the beautiful car, at the Ferrari, at the Lamborghini, or simply when I see the passion that Formula One Grand Prix unleashes. Just pause a minute when you walk around today and look at the 500,000 people staring at the concept car in the next days, and you will tell me if I'm wrong. Without emotion, our industry is dead. This is the dimension on top of the rest that we must nurture all together every day. This is what justifies such kind of kermesse. Automotive is also tradition, sovereignty, sense of belonging, cultural pride. Car makers belong to some place. That's also one of the things that makes our industry special. When you buy a German, a French, an English, an Italian, American, or Japanese car, you're buying a piece of all these countries. The soul of any manufacturer lays in its roots. You cut the roots, you lose the soul. That's why I'm so obsessed with reconnecting Renault with its homeland. Take the new Megane Electric, for example, assembled in Douai with an e-motor produced in Cléon, together with Valeo in the future, a chassis that comes from Le Mans, and that was designed at the Technocentre in Guyancourt. In 3 words, invented in France. When we present here at the Paris Motor Show reinterpretations of the Renault 4 or the Renault 5 Turbo, we are reviving pop icons that millions of people still remember. Products that embody a certain French way of innovating and creating. And this is good for the whole industry. It puts emotion in the equation. Look, it is not about nostalgia. It is about authenticity. And authenticity is a characteristic that is essential to build great brands. Let's not be mistaken. automotive has always meant inventing the future. People tend to forget something which is actually pretty crucial, that our industry has always massively contributed to push social, economical, and technical progress. Remember that still today, as I speak, 30% of the research and development of a big technological country like Germany is in our sector. Maybe we don't come first on innovation, but when we get there, technology becomes reliable and affordable because of the scale and the sophistication of our industrial operations. You will see that phenomenon with battery technology, for example. That's our role in the food chain. And no respectable and powerful economy can afford the luxury to give up on all of that. And I hope that regulators and authorities still have that very, very clear in their minds. Today, it's true, we are faced with more and bigger challenges than ever in our history, from energy transition to the digital revolution, to changing mobility demands, to the urge of reducing our impact to zero. I think it's an unprecedented urge to change for all of us. Some might find it frightening. They might consider that society is asking too much from car makers and too fast. At Renault, we think that we live in an incredible, exciting moment. Having to reinvent your entire model, I think it's a privilege that is not given to all generations of executives. One thing is sure, this is a moment for the braves. I am lucky to lead a company that survived one of its worst crises in its long history. Like anyone that came back from almost a deadly experience, we are hungry for life. We reset priorities, asking ourselves the right questions. And we are brave, braver than ever, I can guarantee you. We are determined to make of the Renault Group a front runner and the leader in this transformation. We have already started, actually, setting very high ambitions and going for innovation to lead the race in all the fields of transformation. When it comes to the shift to electromobility, for example, we are heading for 100% electric Renault brand in Europe as soon as 2030. When it comes to decarbonization, we go further beyond regulations, adopting a cradle-to-grave approach, because you always have to stick to the truth. And we believe that common sense will always prevail at the end. When we turn an historical mass production plant into the first refurbishing site in Europe, the refactory in Flins, I would say it's an unorthodox decision for sure, but it's also the right thing to do. We move away from the obsession for sheer volume growth. The refactory is the symbol of how we push circular economy, not to the margins, but to the core of our activities. Last week, with the creation of another company called The Future is Neutral, we went a step further. And I also invite you to go and see our Scenic Vision concept car after the conference. This car will give you an idea of our ambition when it comes to sustainable product engineering. Another field of major transformation is mobility. Here also, we open the way by creating Mobilize, our brand dedicated to the new mobility and energy services. It is unique because, yes, it is an automotive brand, but here we are coming from the service world to the product, not vice versa. The product is a tool, an excuse, and this will make modern mobility affordable and profitable. We are presenting here Duo. This is a quadricycle designed for the needs of car sharing, city, and user-friendly. Duo can transport 1 or 2 people at 35% lower cost for mobility operators than a traditional car. It takes up only a third of the space of a normal car. When it comes to the digital revolution, we are also moving very fast towards the software-defined vehicle. It's one more revolution on top of all those I have already mentioned, allowing cars to be continuously upgradable during their entire life cycle. This is also a real game changer for the industry. It will be the first time ever that the cars remain linked to our after-sales system for their whole life. We'll fully achieve the software-defined vehicle by 2025. Is going to have the same effect in the car industry as the invention of the smartphone had in the telecommunication industry in 2007. And then when it comes to hydrogen mobility, go and see our master van H2 Tech. Our joint venture, Hyvia, has just been recognized as a major leading project by the European Union. And these are only few examples. I told you that courage is the key word during these times of transformation. The second one is openness. Openness. I have worked now 30 years in this industry. I've always heard and practiced the same mantra. Scale is key, synergy and size are paramount. For sure, that kind of approach will always be relevant in such a capital-intensive industry. But that works better when demand is stable and technology is mature. You optimize what you already know, you look for efficiency. It's not time for Kaizen only anymore. It is time for effectiveness. We are going to live in volatile environments and uncertainty. We are going to work on new technologies that by definition are still evolutionary. These are times for agility, times for the innovators. Take batteries, for instance. You may invest in billions in battery factories, but it will not prevent someone from coming up a few months later with a game-changing solution. We must be ready to move and change direction swiftly. In other words, flexibility, creativity, and innovation become vital. Let me give you another example. Product development cycle is traditionally around 3 to 4 years, or 5. But in the software, it's measured in months, if not days. It is simply not the same sport. Openness is not only for the new, it is also openness for cooperation and sharing. We will need a lot of money, as Luc said, each one of us, to make this transformation happen. We can't invent and invest alone in our corner. It is a traditional instinct of big companies. It will not work, and we will not be able to afford it. That's why, at Renault, we believe in a horizontal and ecosystemic approach on the entire automotive value chain. Our idea is to co-invest, co-develop, and co-create with the best players in every new domain. We do that in order to lower financial risks, address transversal challenges, and boost innovation. And it is already working. For example, this horizontal approach allowed us to go very fast on engineering the control of the EV value chain, with an already 30% coverage against 10% only last year. And we are going to reach our 80% target well before 2030. as expected at the beginning. There is a notion, I would say, of generosity, unfortunately, a very rare material in our world, in being able to integrate an ecosystem model. Being a leader is not only about being the first and being the biggest, it's also about being able to embark the others with you on the journey, accepting to share the pains, but also the benefit. I have never denied, even to my employees, that this transition will not be a walk in the park. But the Renault Group wants to manage the whole thing with responsibility. We want to do our bit. And that's one of the reasons why we so much appreciate our collaboration with the PFA. And I want to thank you for all what you do. For example, we are working with other leading companies in the background to find creative solutions to support the industry suppliers to build a future. We have also co-founded an ecosystem for innovation in the new mobility with some great French companies coming from other industries. It's called Software République, and it's working very, very well. We are opening to partners and investors our circular economy business, not because we don't have the money, but because we think it is better to do it together. But there is, for me, no better example than the Renault University project to show this mindset. This is a new ecosystemic tech university in the fields of cybersecurity, electric mobility, data science, and circular economy. And this is something unique in Europe. We want to upskill and reskill 15,000 people by 2025, not only at Renault, it is open to the entire industry. To set up the Renault University, we partnered with big companies from various industries like Forvia or Orange, with academic institutions, with employment agencies and secondary education institutions, and of course, with local public authorities. The scale of the Renault University makes it very attractive for the participants. It also gives us credibility with public decision makers. Beyond the Renault teams, the Renault University is an open platform. It's for the whole industry. Component suppliers, energy providers, fellow car makers. For example, our circular economy training offer in Flins will cover the entire value chain. We want to become a reference in the mobility industry and even beyond. You are all welcome to join us and take part. It was especially important for me to share these thoughts with you here at the Paris Motor Show. Our sport is becoming more and more collective. Our ability to generate agile networks and nimble collaboration will be one of the keys to open the future of automotive. I'm pretty sure of that. And for that, gatherings, places where ideas and ambitions can be shared are more relevant than ever. So no doubt that the future of automotive will be collective and fueled by emotions, at least for me. And all this new energy, I hope, will continue to crystallize in the decades to come in places like the Mondial de l'Automobile. So thank you very much for your attention. And I think now I have to take a couple of questions, right?
I'm not going to let you go like this. Please join me here for a few questions, Luca.
Okay. Good.
Please have a seat. As you said, the life cycle for the development cycle for cars is pretty long in the industry. It takes 4 years. So the first cars on which you have had a big input will be released pretty soon, maybe next year, the Renault 5 and the 4L. How confident are you about the success of those models, and can they also be exported? Do you think that the the nostalgia you talked about will work outside of France, or is it mainly a product for those two cars are products for the French market?
No, no, nobody does a product for one nation in the automotive industry. Actually, this is one of the issues we have when regulators define rules by region, but in fact, all our products have to fly worldwide, right? So the question of nostalgia, because I did things like the Cinquecento in the past, etc., they always ask me the question, but my answer is that, you know, any great brand has so-called classics, you know? You could argue that a Volkswagen Golf is a nostalgia exercise, or a Mercedes S-Class is a nostalgia exercise as well, right? Because it's more or less always the same thing. But every big brand has a classic, and our classics are cars like the one you can see on a motor show, Renault 5, Renault 4, Turbo. It's a way to, you know, reconnect with your roots somehow. It's a shortcut to the best idea that the people and image that people have of your brand. And I can tell you, these were global products, right? So I'm pretty sure that they will be successful everywhere. Of course, they are completely reinvented. It's you know, these are electric cars. They have nothing to do. It's just the flavor that you have, the design, and maybe the name. But there's nothing to do with, you know, the cars we were doing 40, 50 years ago. So I think I'm pretty confident, because otherwise I would not invest hundreds of millions in doing them. So.
It's a question I'm going to ask several of the participants to today's debate, but it's something that Luc mentioned in his speech also, is that with electrification of the car, we also see prices going up. And the prices have been already going up in the last few years in the automotive industry. And I'm not talking about the inflation today. It's just equipment, regulation makes the car more and more expensive. Are you afraid that the cars of the future will be a luxury good just for some, and that a part of the public will just buy second-hand cars because they can't afford the new models?
Yeah, I think I've said that so many years ago when we were starting working on electric cars before I came to Renault. It was pretty obvious that when you have a new technology, prices are always high. You know, the architecture of a traditional combustion car, we've been working on that for 140 years. So it takes time to, you know, bring down the cost. And at the beginning, I know it's a bit like politically incorrect to say this, but in fact, the people that have to pay for the transition are people that have the money to buy an electric car, and they have a garage and they can put the plug.
So they subsidize the affordable cars of the
normal.
future?
I mean, I remember when I was in 2007, I had an iPhone. My kids didn't have an iPhone, and maybe they had it in 2011 and 12 because they had less money than me. Okay, so it's a pretty normal thing. I think that Europe, in particular, is becoming a pretty mature, let's say, automotive market. It's a substitution market. So you can't bet on growth of the European market. Of course, it can come back after COVID, etc., because it's pretty depressed now. So it might come back at a reasonable level. But you can't build your strategy on the idea that in Europe we will sell 30 million cars, right? So it's by definition a substitution thing. The phenomenon that you were mentioning will be there. Car will become expensive. Although I have to say that if you look at the thing a bit 360, everybody's fixed on the list price of the car.
The acquisition, the first.
Yeah, exactly. But in fact, you know, we know that electric cars, they have three things. One is they are cheaper for the usage in total cost of usage. Also the maintenance is cheaper, okay, because you know many reasons that we know, and also we tend to see that the residual value of electric cars is higher than combustion. So you combine the three things. If you take this not on only one variable of the equation,
but on the life cycle,
we feel like cars like the 5 and the 4, in terms of the monthly rate you will be forced to pay and the budget you will have to spend on the car is pretty much comparable to today's combustion car. But people look only at the price, right?
But
journalists that don't do their job. They just look at the first
yeah, we do our job.
superficial thing. So do your job and make the math.
There's an article 2 days in Les Echos about a study of l'ADEME in France who shows that on the long run, it's true that
Yeah.
total cost of ownership
Yeah.
might go well. Historically, Renault has had a strategy to produce the most affordable cars outside of France. You talk a lot about producing in France, and the cars you mentioned are the affordable cars of the electricity model in the future. How confident are you that the cost, the competitiveness of the French factories will now make you put you in a good position to actually produce those cars in France, or in order to be competitive, will you also have to produce in Turkey and in other countries like you did for the Clio in the past?
Look, we made. I remember, 1 year and a half ago when I started asking my team to localize Renault 4, 5 in France. They look at me like I would be completely nuts. Okay, because of course the temptation to go, somewhere else, looking at, at the numbers, was pretty obvious. But there is an element of, as we said before, of sense of belonging, cultural pride to have a product, especially those kind of iconic products in your homeland. So we took we made the bet, and after 2 years of work, also thanks to the fact that we've really concentrated, all the ecosystem of EV around the north of France, that we are fully dedicating those and specializing those plants on electric cars, and the support of the employees, of the trade unions, of the local authority, and also the suppliers and our partners. I can tell you that we have reached a competitiveness level which is comparable to East Europe in the north of France. So it's a major achievement. Of course, now this thing we have to execute, but we really see the potential to do it, and we have to fight for that. It's not easy, but it's a part of the idea of bringing back France in our, at the center of our strategy, because we feel we need to hook the company somewhere, and that's the place where to do it.
So for many years, the car production in France has been going down.
We will double production. From now to we'll double production from today with the decision that we made. And we will actually move, let's say, pivot France on basically the new technology. So we made it more of a story of not quantity of cars, but rather value added that you can generate. And that should be the right discussion, because one thing is to produce, I don't know, 100,000 Dacia Logan, and one thing is to produce 100,000 Porsche Cayenne plug-in hybrid. I mean, it's a difference. So we never talk about that. Again, it's a pretty superficial way of looking at things when you only count the number of cars, right? You have to look at what's the value added, into the thing. So we are pushing France into the higher part of the value chain, and the new one.
For the last year or two, maybe, there was a big semiconductor crisis. The supply chain was disrupted.
Yeah.
Do you think that the worst is now over? Do you predict that we will back to a kind of normal situation pretty soon, or you think it's going to take?
It's very difficult to say, because everybody tells you a different story, right? So we're still, pretty much in trouble with this kind of thing. So sometimes we have to close plants and reopen, etc. This value chain was a little bit untransparent for us, OEMs, because we would actually delegate first-tier supplier to handle this kind of thing. So we had to learn how this thing works, and it was pretty much of a battle for all of us, even our suppliers. I think that it might get better, but it's a problem is here to stay for a while, because I think that the semiconductor industry is going into technology that we normally would not use in our cars. So there is also a notion of re-engineering the cars. That's why, for example, centralized electronic architecture is important, because instead of having 90 computers in your car, you have 5. They are much more powerful, so they use semiconductors that are at the level of technology that is the standard, for the semiconductor industry. So there is still some work, but we have been, we have suffered, we're still there. So.
And we'll see you soon on the roads with the new cars. Thank you very much, Luca. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.